Team building in Nikke tends to be pretty straightforward. You're going to want a burst 1, a burst 2, and 2 burst 3s. And how do you decide which of those units you should put on your team? Well, you look up a tier list, you look up a YouTube video, or you just wing it. So you got your 20-second burst 1, you got your 20-second burst 2, and you got your 2 burst 3s. Well, that leaves you with a 5th unit that's not going to burst. And this is where it can be not so obvious as to what you should pick. This unit is going to be known as an off burst. Your 5th Nikke that's not in the burst rotation, but still someone that's going to be beneficial to the team as a whole. So that's what this video is going to be about. It's going to be about off burst Nikkes. What are they and which ones should you use? Well, I've already covered what an off burst Nikke is, so let's cover some examples of some good off burst Nikkes. You want to look for a Nikke that has beneficial effects that are triggered without the use of their burst skill. Let's start with Crown. So you may already know this, but Crown is an exceptional burst 2. Maybe the best. But did you know that a lot of her power doesn't even require her to burst for you to make use of it? So Crown skill 1 will trigger as soon as your team enters full burst, and what it's going to do is it's going to buff every single character that used their burst ability in that rotation and give them an attack and a reload speed buff. And everyone that did not use their burst skill in this rotation is going to get a defense buff and a reload speed buff as well. Reload speed is generally going to be one of the biggest contributing factors to your DPS. Less time spent reloading, more time spent dealing damage. Now, Crown skill 2 is still going to taunt and make her invulnerable and recover her own HP. But whenever she gets healed, she's also going to buff all of her allies with attack damage. So she can do this herself, but it can also trigger from some other Nikke on your team that can heal her. Crown isn't just a very good unit to use in your burst rotation, she can also fit into your team when she's not using her burst. So another example of a burst 2 you can use as an off burst is Maid Mast. So Maid Mast, her skill 1 is going to continuously increase the critical rate and attack of all allies while she's in the drunken status. Her drunken status is triggered every single time your team enters burst stage 1. Her skill 2 is going to trigger whenever you enter burst stage 3, and it's going to buff distributed damage and reload speed for the whole team. Now, typically I tend not to use Maid Mast as a off burst. I like to use her in conjunction with another burst 2, but the option to off burst her is still there. Another really great example of an off burst unit is Privity. A lot of burst 3s tend to be selfish units that have kits designed around buffing their own damage output, but Privity is a burst 3 that offers a slew of buffs for your entire team, and she can do so without even bursting. So Privity's skill 1 is going to activate every single time your team goes into full burst, and it's going to affect everyone on the team. So first of all, it's going to give an attack buff, a reload speed buff, a pretty significant one, and an attack damage buff. However, the last part, which is situationally a downside, or it can be an upside depending on what your team composition is like, Privity is going to reduce the max ammunition capacity of your entire team by about half. But with the massive reload speed buff that she provides, it kind of cancels out any negative effects that this max ammo reduction is going to present. Also, Privity's skill 2, whenever the final bullet in her magazine hits a target, it's going to debuff that target and make them take more damage from all sources. Privity's kit offers a lot for your team. She debuffs targets to take more damage, she buffs attack, she buffs reload speed, she buffs attack damage. And when you pair her with someone like Crown, who also has a reload speed buff for the team, you can make it so that your units spend virtually 0 frames reloading their weapons. Let's talk about a couple niche off-burst units that you can use. First off, we have Maiden Ice Rose. You may hear her be referred to as Winter Maiden, X Maiden, Christmas Maiden, any kind of thing like that. It's always going to be referring to Maiden Ice Rose. Let's start with her skill 1. So Maiden Ice Rose's skill 1 is all about MP replenishment. Whenever your team enters burst stage 1 and full burst, she's going to accumulate some MP. This is mostly a scaler for her burst ability, but we're not going to worry about that since we're just talking about off-burst capabilities. Now let's look at skill 2. Whenever her MP is replenished, all electric code allies, except for herself, are going to get a huge elemental damage bonus, as well as an attack bonus. Elemental damage bonuses that apply to your whole team is very rare, which makes Maiden Ice Rose really easy to slot into your team because she's going to be the sole provider of this buff, and it is a massive damage bonus. So this is a unit that's going to be really good on electric weak bosses and is very commonly used in solo raid. Now let's talk about another niche off-burst character that you could use. Brid Silent Track, and also kind of like with Maiden, you may hear people call her Winter Brid or X Brid or Christmas Brid. I'm going to refer to her as Winter Brid. So Winter Brid, her skill 1, whenever your team enters full burst, every wind code enemy is going to be debuffed to take more damage. And at level 10, this is going to be about a 15% damage bonus for your entire team. Now, in addition to that, with Winter Brid's skill 2, she's going to be able to keep up a damage taken debuff on one wind code enemy after 10 normal attacks. And this debuff is going to be a slightly lower potency than the one that activates from her skill 1. But for all intents and purposes, when you're using this character, which is probably going to be on fire weak bosses, wind code bosses, the enemy is going to have a near permanent damage taken up debuff for your whole team to benefit from. So Winter Brid, really good for fire weak content. And there are a handful of units that are capable of dealing a decent amount of damage despite providing minimal or no buffs to the team that can be used as off bursts. A couple examples are Mihara Bonding Chain and Raven. Mihara Bonding Chain and Raven are both capable of dealing sustained damage without having a huge reliance on bursting. Specifically with Raven, she excels against enemies with multiple parts that can be destroyed because that's going to buff her sustained damage, and her burst is just going to give her a larger buff to her sustained damage. So if the boss does have parts that can be destroyed, the difference between bursting and not bursting isn't as large. So those are just some examples of some of the more commonly used off-burst characters, but when it comes to building your own team and deciding on who you should use for an off-burst, you really just got to look through the skills and see who's going to benefit the entire team without requiring their burst. Anyways, guys, I hope this video helped you out and gave you a little bit of a better understanding about what exactly is an off-burst unit and what you're going to be looking for when selecting them. This is by no means an exhaustive list of every character you can use as an off-burst, but I think it's a good enough starting place. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.